Welcome to Between the Reads, where Black books are shared and celebrated all year long. I'm your host, Audra Russell. There are so many great things going on this year as I continue to amplify Black stories, but I can't do it without your support. Please consider heading over to patreon.com/betweenthereads and becoming a member, or make a one-time donation at www.ko-fi.com/betweenthereadspodcast. Are you ready, Booze and Bros? Then sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Piper G. Hughley will make her historical fiction debut this month with By Her Own Design, a novel of Ann Lowe, fashion designer to the Social Register, who was the black fashion designer of Jackie Kennedy's wedding dress. She is also the author of Sweet Tea by Hallmark Publishing and the author of 2 historical romance series, Migrations of the Heart, about the Great Migration, and Home to Milford College. Piper blogs about the history behind her novels at piperhughley.com and lives in Atlanta, Georgia with her husband and son. Piper, welcome to Between the Reads.
Thank you for having me, Audra. I appreciate it.
I am so glad that you are here. I truly enjoyed this book. And I also have a blog up to write up for you for Black Ink. And I saw that you are a professor at Clark Atlanta.
That's correct.
Yes, I almost went there. I had my acceptance letter, had my dorm assignment, everything, and then Hampton called my name, and I was like, okay.
Oh, okay. Hampton's nice too. I've been there before as well.
Yes,
so.
Yes, but
Yes.
Clark is close to my heart because, I almost went there, so, yes. Yes, so let's get right into this book and tell us what By Her Own Design is all about.
Well, it is about the life and the journey of a young black woman born in 1898, Clayton, Alabama. If you've not heard of Clayton, that's because it's a little small town in Alabama. Can't get no more rural, so. And her journey from that small town beginning to becoming a fashion designer to some of the wealthiest people in the United States. And it's quite a journey. It's not just a black journey, not just a woman's journey. It's an American journey.
Okay, you know what? I have determined that there are some demons that don't want people to know about Ann Lowe's story. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, well, we just want to pursue because that is not acceptable.
Okay, so we're going to go back to the fictional liberties that you talk about in the book.
Okay.
Because...
Fictional liberties.
Yes.
All right, because people need to know.
Because they need to know. So, tell us about the Mike Douglas show, that the footage that surfaced and all of that.
So, okay, so there's 2 things I point out. One was about her second husband, Caleb, in terms of what happened to him. In the book, I had him go off with another woman who had the same name, and so it
she
was
gave
like
him babies,
put up
all
with
that.
her,
Yeah,
all that stuff. So I don't know. Maybe that's just because it's what a regular black man would do anyway. Maybe that's just. I just wrote him off like a regular black man in the most believable way. Family says that he committed suicide.
Really?
That's what they say. But, that's like, I don't know. I don't know if I believe it.
I mean, those were some rough times. So,
They were some...
that's the Great Depression.
Yeah.
If he...
Woman didn't love him enough. He just was so bereft.
And if he was being taken care of in any capacity, you combine that with the Great Depression, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
that's what the family was saying. When they told her, like, are you kidding me? What?
that wouldn't surprise me.
So the other place where I took fictitious liberties, and I just realized it, is because the 1964 appearance of Ann Lowe on the Mike Douglas show, which I did know about and wrote about in the book, had been unearthed. It was laying in a vault somewhere in Philadelphia. I knew it was in Philadelphia, though. I also I just need to take myself up there, Philadelphia, to Group W. I know it's there. They found it, and it's now online, so it is posted for people to see on YouTube. And she tells some things that, of course, are different from our story in terms of the way that Anna Lowe spoke about her life. And one of the things she spoke about was the Olivia de Havilland Commission, which in my book, I have it in the most, I guess the way most people would think a commission would happen. Somebody comes in, they want a dress, they're talking about what kind of dress it would be. But in real life, Ann Lowe said that Sonia, who gets the credit for that dress, told her to put her 10 gold fingers on a dress. She didn't know what it was for. She didn't know who it was for. She just made this fabulous dress with her 10 gold fingers.
And
she didn't even get to meet Olivia.
You did kind of allude to it by the way that you said when it was written up in the paper. They had Sonia, but no mention of her name.
Yeah, she didn't get the credit. But we know that floral signature that it was her dress. And like when people watch Mike Douglas' appearance, which I hope they do, she says, I hand painted those flowers on the dress myself. I mean, just a brilliant, creative genius at work. You don't want that dress to be heavy with flowers? I'll paint the flowers on myself. And if you go on Google and you look at the way it's just draped across from the dress, from the strapless bust line down to the bottom, hand-painted flowers on that dress that she won her Oscar in. She didn't even get to meet Olivia. I had them all buddied up practically.
How? As I said when I thought we were recording, how do you make a dress for somebody you've never met? How do you size them for that?
You're a brilliant genius who is having to navigate many and various aspects of racism.
Okay.
Which is part of the reasons why I've been, want to write these books about Black women of the past, is to give them their flowers, yes, but also to show us we are in some rough times. We have been in some rough times, and these people hopefully can show us how to work through these rough times. So,
people listening to my podcast, whether you're Black, whether you're white, you want to know why I got these issues with white folks, because I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop, because ain't shit changed in 400 years. They be doing it is a wonder. Black people are...
We are a wonder.
We are a wonder. We are resilient as a mofo, because all the stuff they do to us, all the generational wealth we've lost, they tell us to, pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, and then they burn down the damn towns when we've made our own towns and made our own banks and made our own grocery stores and made our own everything, and then they hate it because it's better than what they had, even though we didn't have anywhere near the financial means that they had.
Yep.
This is why. Because that woman should have died a multi-millionaire. A multi-millionaire.
I mean, think about if like they giving her credit, there might have been how there is Dior, and we know Halston, and we know
Ralph Lauren and Chanel, all of that. Gucci.
There might be the House of Lowe. It would have been something
But there's nothing. That woman had financial turmoil after financial turmoil in her life.
And for the thanks she gives in Jackie Kennedy's biography...
Let me tell you something about that woman. I never liked her in the first place. And I don't care if you're a fan or not. I never liked that woman in the first place. And everybody knows that her daddy was black. I don't care what nobody says. That's why they called him Blackjack. Cause he had some black back in there, and he had that olivey skin looking thing, and he wasn't Greek. Like, don't try and play me. Like,
Jack Cowherder. That's what Bouvier means.
In
case you didn't know.
No, I didn't. And that makes a whole lot
fancy
of sense.
French sounding Bouvier, it means cowherder. But all her biographers just, reduce her to seamstress, family seamstress. Dress might have made itself for all they know.
Well, but Jackie didn't open up her mouth and say nothing. Because if she had, we would have known who Ann Lowe was. So I got my problems with that woman.
Well, like I said, the reason why I thought that happened was because I think Anne, maybe I shouldn't tell it because it's in the book. Anne breached a social expectation of their relationship. But see, even after, I'm saying her relationship with not just Jackie, but with Jackie's family continued for upwards, it was like a 13-year-long relationship between a custom bespoke fashion designer and the
that's
family.
Not really breaching a social barrier when you've known, if it was the only dress she did, fine, but she has known this family, she's watched this girl grow up.
Yep.
So if she breached it, she had the right to, because Jackie was acting like a little brat. Your daddy ain't here. Get over it, put your skinny, ugly ass in that dress and go down the aisle and let's move it on. I'm just saying. She didn't say it like that. But she was like, listen.
That's what she said.
That was the undertone. She was like, listen, hold on to it. Did your daddy ever tell you he loved you? And I'm paraphrasing. I'm putting it in the black. She was like, did your daddy ever tell you he loved you? Well, yes, bitch. That's more than I had. Get your ass in that dress and walk down the aisle. I'm just saying. I'm putting it the Ebonics way, okay? But she was very graceful about it and was like, listen.
The Southern lady.
She was a Southern lady about the whole thing.
But
she had a right to do it.
Wait till you see her and how she comports herself with goofy Mike Douglas and the other two guests that was busy trying to tell her what to say out her mouth. Yeah.
I'm going to see if I can edit that video in at the end, because it's gonna go up on YouTube as an audio, but it's gonna have graphics. So I'm gonna see if I can put it in on the end for people to see the bullshit.
Yeah,
because this is people want to know why I curse, because I have not cursed most of my life, especially raising kids. I was not a cursor, but somewhere around 45 years old,
it all came in.
I'm tired.
I hear you, sir.
And we all express the exhaustion in different ways. I cuss. I get mad.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the wedding dress while we're here.
Okay.
Miss Jackie's spoiled ass. Now, was it true that she was actually unhappy with it in real life?
Yes. That's true. I mean, you could say Caroline Kennedy tell you in terms of the way her mother felt about her mother's wedding dress. Yep.
All because she didn't have some boring little French whatever for her wedding.
Yeah.
This is that beautiful dress she was unhappy with.
Yep. She did not like it. And I said in what I wrote into it, I think the main source of her discontent was that she felt it flattened her chest.
Well, if you ain't got no boobies, don't be blaming me for that shit. Blame your mama. You ain't got no boobs. I mean, sis, get some implants then. If your family's rich enough, go get some implants. But don't be blaming. I can make a dress for you, ma'am. I can make the dress, but I can't make the boobs. I can try and make you look a little more chesty, but I'm not a plastic surgeon. There's not an MD behind my name. I am a designer, ma'am.
Ma'am, this is a Wendy.
Okay, Blame your DNA. And y'all be glad that Jack's father forced him to marry your ass, because he didn't want to marry you in the first place. That much I didn't know. Because he was not a marrying type. He didn't want to go into politics. And he thought she was ugly. And she was. Because I looked at her face and I was always like, what do people see in this woman? She had to be graceful because she didn't have no looks. They took her daddy's face off of him and put it right. She was a woman with a man's face.
Well, what Ann Lowe said in other places, and what she repeats on that Mike Douglas thing, is about her Janet Auchincloss, Jackie's mother, being the most beautiful woman she had ever known. And it was an interesting thing for her to repeat, standing in 1964. You remember that was the year after Jack had been assassinated, and Jackie could do no wrong, or whatever. And she said, Janet Auchincloss was the most beautiful woman she had ever seen, which was in the book. So
Jackie did not get her looks. I mean, I'm just saying. Jackie O fans, y'all could be mad at me. Don't be mad at Piper. Be mad at me, because I never liked the woman, and this book gave me reason not to like her.
Well, part of the important part I thought was to show not the Jackie that we end up knowing, but that there was a journey to that. And this is her as a young woman who's uncertain in a lot of ways about this marriage. There is another book that's releasing the week after mine called Jackie and Me by Louis Bayard, and writes through the lens of Lem Billings, who was Jack's gay best friend, and shows their courtship and just how hands off Jack was a lot of the time. So it's a very good book. You wanted more confirmation about you.
See,
it's in history. It's like one of the most unhappiest presidential marriages.
Oh, well, I mean, I just knew that from the things I had watched about John F. Kennedy, and his father had groomed his brother to go into politics, and then when he got killed in the war, he was like, "Okay, well, you're taking over," and he was like, "No, I don't want to," and he beat the crap out of him and was like, "You're going to. It's not a question." And then was it true that he dated Audrey Hepburn?
Oh, yeah.
That was,
yeah.
So
Audrey Hepburn, Grace Kelly.
And he went from all that to Jackie. Okay. She should have been glad he was even forced to marry her, because I'm just saying, sis ain't have it.
But yeah,
she had grace and style, and that was it.
That was Lem Billings' Louis Bayard's thesis in that novel, is that it didn't look like it was going to go off for a long time.
I like that little prediction with the flowers at the wedding, too.
I couldn't resist that. When I heard what kind of flowers they had, I said, it's going in.
Like, that's symbolic. It's going to be a whole lot of tragedy in your marriage, ma'am. Okay. So... in one part of the book, Anne was talking, and she said that her grandmother, Georgia, told her that the key to surviving as a black person is to get you some good white people.
Yep.
Let's discuss where this came from and why. I mean, we know, but why did you feel that it was important to put this in the book as a conversation?
Because that's what old-time black folks had believed.
Some of them. And they were some of them. Because Caleb wasn't having it.
Yeah, Caleb wasn't having it. And, Oprah Winfrey's grandmother told her that. So, it's not just that. It wasn't just that. A belief that some black folks had, that you need to get up under the right butt cheek of some very influential and powerful white person, and you'll be okay.
Well, will you, though? Because, I
Well,
mean,
this
was
is
Anne
what
okay?
the whole thing in terms of even with her grandmother's perspective, that they're going to take the general's money to buy her freedom, but as a requirement, make her stay there to continue to make dresses.
So is she really free? I mean...
Is that freedom? Doesn't sound like it. Yeah.
Because that was another scene. There's two scenes that made me really hot. One was that one where she went and told that woman that, you know, was it her grandmother had died and that her mother was
the first lady of Alabama. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and she was like, what about my dresses? She was like, your dresses will be to you on time. I just wanted to let you know. I was like, oh, see, that's what I'm talking about, the cussing, because I was like, bitch, she just told you that her grandmother just died and her mother is like not well.
Well, one of the factual tent poles was that she finished the commission, and
I'm sure she did.
Yeah, that she finished the commission in the wake of dealing with this death. It was just devastating. So what would lead up to that was, this woman insisting somehow that the dresses be delivered on time.
Yeah, the other thing I don't like is that little ceremony you had for her at the end.
Yeah.
I'm like, this woman had lost the eye from a doctor that was no good, who probably her other eye probably could have been saved.
That's one of the things about seeing her on the Mike Douglas shows, how thick those glasses are, and the way her eyes are in is interesting to see. In terms of how well
and
could she see.
They give her this thing all, after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
And then have everybody modeling her. I'm like, yeah, okay, beautiful. But is all that going to replace all the wealth that I lost from all the years of nobody knowing that I did all these dresses for these famous people?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what doing the dress for a woman who won an Academy Award, or for Jackie, if they had known that she did it?
Yep.
Like I said, there would be a House of Low right now, probably.
Yep. But you know what? It's kind of, that gesture was kind of the equivalent of somebody who works at a company for like 40 and 50 years of lives, and they give them a gold watch. That's how it is. It's like that.
Keep this stanky little watch and pay me some money.
And back in the day, people be glad to get that watch. They'd be looking forward to get that gold watch. And not realizing...
It wasn't even real gold.
Right, exactly. And not realizing, like, is that an even exchange? Is that a fair exchange?
50 years, and I get this stanky-ass little watch. That's what you're... And it's not even real gold. Don't play with me. So for 50 years of hard labor...
Yep.
And giving you all of my ideas and everything, I get a whole watch.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That I couldn't even pawn if I wanted to get enough money to do anything with.
Yep. Mm-hmm. That's how people used to look at their labor, which is quite different in 2022. We don't look at our labor that way anymore, especially with the pandemic. It's like, yeah. So this is part of the reason why I write these books, is to give people a sense of what had happened in the past. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's talk about the flowers that Anne always made.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's, for me, and we all read things and we get different things out of the book. But I think for me, those flowers were that message of bloom where you are planted.
Yeah, exactly. That's what she did. Making them out of scraps of material in order to decorate and garnish. That's exactly what she did in terms of blooming where she was planted. So,
making beauty out of ashes.
Yes, exactly.
That's really what she did.
Yeah, at the feet of the worn feet of her mother and her grandmother, as they say, from very young age. So,
just beautiful flowers.
Yes.
Because that was another scene I was mad about, was when she went to that design school, and they were like, first he was like, well, you can't afford this. And she opened up her bank book and was like, is that enough? And he was like, oh, well, wait here. Then he comes back and puts her in the classroom, behind the classroom where everybody else is going to be, and it's like a little vestibule between them. And so she sits in there and starts designing it, and then she's like putting her little flowers on everything. Why you let her teach them that, Piper?
That's supposed to happen. When you see on the Mike Douglas show, she talks about that.
You could have changed the story. You changed everything else. You needed to change that. I didn't want her teaching them white folks nothing.
When she talks about that, the school, and she actually provides an important clue in terms of the location, because I've been trying to track down that school. So I'm wondering what happened to it.
Right.
Because I guess they closed because they lost, people out of their racism and small-mindedness.
Yep,
and whatnot,
exactly.
And karma,
there you go.
and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I just wondered if it had got folded into something else.
Maybe.
And people, aren't telling. They don't want that past history to be revealed, because that stuff happens. And then it gets folded into an entity, and then they just conveniently forget about it or something. That's my question. In terms of, is it part of FIT or something like that?
That's what I was going to say. I bet you it is.
So that's what I want to know.
She need to teach them nothing. They were like, oh, you did it? Yes, I did. And the one girl, the way her tone was, she was like, she says. I didn't say I made it. I did make it. Stop trying to question what I'm doing. Don't be mad because you don't have my skill.
As the Southern lady, she says, talks about, oh, yes, I'd had a certain kind of time at the school, and I wasn't in the same room with them, and blah, blah, blah. And it's not there anymore. That's what she says. See,
basically,
it's all of that, in that little phrase, and it's not there anymore.
It's not there anymore.
I'm like, I know what you're saying, Ann.
Yep.
But a lot of these people, when you're writing historical fiction and whatnot, they want as much of the true stuff as you can put in there in terms of that. And I want people to feel some kind of way about that.
Listen, I was feeling some kind of way all the way through this book. So there was a constant message in the book that a woman really should have a way to support herself.
Yes, indeed. Totally believe that.
Why did you feel it was important to put that message in the book, especially given the time frame it was in, when that was not common for especially a black woman to do?
Well, as a professor, in terms of what I've taught a lot of the aspects in terms of what black women were supporting themselves, especially in that first half of the 20th century, when you were either a nurse, a teacher, or a domestic worker, and that comprised a good majority of what black women in the United States, how they were employed in terms of that. And that she managed to do something else that was of a relative rarity. It existed, but of a relative rarity. But it's always been a mindset, and even in my next book, it's a mindset in terms of, if a woman's mind is not suitably occupied with something of her own, then her attentions, her energy, and everything will become negative. And it either vents itself on the marriage or the husband or the world or whatever. But, as a human being, a woman must have her own work. So, and Ann Lowe, sort of pointed that out for me. And like I said, my next book is about American Daughters. It's about the unknown friendship between Booker T. Washington's daughter Portia and Theodore Roosevelt's daughter Alice.
Wow.
Yeah. so it's like these.
You just be having all the juicy history.
Yes, that's what my students will call my class historical tea.
All right.
Yes.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Wow. I didn't even know about that.
Mm-hmm.
When is that book coming out?
Next year. Mm-hmm. Yeah, next year.
You have a title for it yet?
American Daughters. Mm-hmm.
Oh, American Daughters.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the title.
Mm-hmm.
All
That
right.
is the title. You say, you know, sort of the daughter of the president, the daughter of the black president. You know, they had a lot in common, and they were friends. But you know, it's always a question, and it's one of the things I'm excited to explore in terms of how is it possible to maintain a real friendship when there's white supremacy?
And that's a good question.
Yeah.
Because that is the question I have been grappling with, because Friday we had an incident with us and a neighbor across the street after 19 years of living in this neighborhood.
Wow.
Never having an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I have been grappling with. That happened last Friday. This is what I have been grappling with for a week. Like, I can't balance, because my neighbors who professed to, love us, went into their houses.
Yep. Yeah.
Stayed on code. And I'm like,
Wow. Isn't that something? So yeah, that's
how do you balance that?
Yep.
Can you really be, true friends?
Yep.
Because in my definition, a true friend would have come when the cops came and been a witness.
Yep. That's it.
So I'm ready to read that book. You just need to send me an email when that one comes out. Like, Audra, it's up and for sale.
I will.
Go ahead and buy it. Yes, please do. Please do. Now, Lee Cohn and Caleb West.
The husband.
Let's discuss. We can start with that little pedophile, Lee Cohn. Marrying a 12-year-old girl. So you got that idea to write him that way because of the census that you saw and the information that you had?
Yeah. And actually, once again, I made it a little bit better than the truth actually was. The information that comes from other sources in terms of Ann says that he didn't want her to sew at all. That he wanted her to just put it away. Stop doing it. But I made it so that, but this is also part of it, was I saw in that census that his profession was a tailor, that he was a tailor. I thought, okay, well, maybe he wants to use her skill set for himself.
Right.
Instead. And that's how I just made it a little bit better, even though it was boring and what she saw as hot, difficult work to tailor. I had the hardest time envisioning that he would have just suffocated her in terms of her not doing it at all.
Yeah. And there was such a symbolism there, because she was just this, she made these flowers and she made these pretty things, and this little snake comes along, and he just was like a little snake, the way he just showed up and was just sweet talking on her, and then waited for that right moment when she was at the store and was like, come on, let's go get married now. And then, like, he couldn't just wait to get her married and get her up in that bed so he could have sex with a little 12-year-old girl.
Child, it's just awful.
And then when she stopped drinking the tea, I was like, Ann!
Oh, it's a dumb teenage thing, right?
Right, it is.
It's like teenagers have to get their heads bumped several times before they learn. It's like, it's the whole thing. It's like, and you learned before, like, that marriage wasn't going to help you necessarily get in to make the dresses that you want. So why are you gonna?
Right. And he just came slithering all around and just took all that beauty, everything out of her life, and just tried to make her life ugly.
Yep.
And boring and flat.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. But I said, in terms of some of the research that I did about child brides and all that, that was a very typical kind of aspect. And then what usually happens is that they grow up. Mm-hmm. And they find their voice or whatever. But for these pedophiles, because that's what they are, pedophiles, rapists.
That's why I called him that.
Rapists,
a pedophile and a rapist. Yep.
Are doing this is usually because in some way they feel insecure or some kind of, they feel as if society's overlooked them or something. They need to feel important in some kind of way. So that's why they go get a child, and it's just the most dreadful thing. And you know he appealed to her because of the daddy thing.
When her grandmama came, it was like, if he's laying a hand on you, it was like, open your mouth and say it, say it, say it, leave. Just, oh my God.
Everybody has their young years when they did.
Yes, they do.
Nobody.
She was too embarrassed to tell them, I'm sure.
Nobody's exempt from that. Even me, I had time. We all had our time. And we didn't know how to open our mouth and speak, or just got run over, or anything like that. Yeah. So.
And then here comes Caleb some years later.
Well, at least he did something right for a little bit.
For a little bit.
Yeah,
they had a great sex life. They were very passionate with each other. But I'm mad at him because she explained up front what it was about. She was like, understand this. 1, I can't have no kids for you. And 2, look, I am about this shop. And I'm about taking care of my son and making sure he gets a college education. And I'm about making dresses. That is my life. And he up there, oh yeah, I can handle it. Mm-hmm. And then.
I think that's also kind of typical, unfortunately.
The way I side-eyed when both of them moved on, I was like, but especially him, you gonna get another wife with the same name. How? What are we doing? What are you doing? What are you doing, sir, and why are you doing it? No. I was like, yeah, okay.
Whatever, dude. Yeah.
Have your kids.
But what cracked me up in terms of her true life situation is how that name Lee just chased her all of her life.
That was my next question. What was the deal with that? Why did this name keep surfacing in her life?
Anybody who knows me and knows my other books and stuff like that knows how seriously I take naming my characters. It is a thing. I teach it to other writers and stuff. But this being as biographical historical fiction, I could only take liberties in certain ways, and that was true. That was true. Yeah. Yep.
Because that name was just, it was good and bad in her life.
Mm-hmm. Well, his real name was Andrew, though, so, but, still, really.
Mm-hmm. Now, the pipe bursting.
Yeah.
And we're not going to say
what happened in the book. Just to say, but I wanted to create a sense of mystery about that.
But the person that you revealed, why?
Well, see, it's not always the most obvious person in terms of that. I'd say so. And
because in real life, they don't really know what happened.
Well, in real life, as she explained on the Mike Douglas show, she said that the ceiling of the shop was made of tin and it was flimsy. And I actually read this story in a newspaper account, a contemporary newspaper account, that the ceiling was made of tin and it was flimsy, and that the dude who lived above the shop had a party, and that the bathtub had been turned on and it went all night long. And that's what happened when the water fell through to the shop. And she described it as ankle deep and all of this other kind of stuff in terms of the shop. And when I saw that, I was like, she has several people in her life who would not wish her ill,
Mm-hmm.
who wish her ill. So maybe if I make a little mystery out of this, it's, one of those things in terms of what writers do, say, like, to keep people engaged, to keep them reading. And that was one thing that when I got to speak with representatives of the family, that was true about that person.
Okay.
So I got lucky with that one.
Whatever, because I'd have been like, when that person was revealed, I'd have been like, don't you get... When she revealed it, I'd been like, get out of my house. Get out of my house. Do you know how much money I lost? Do you know what we went through? My eyesight is failing and no, get out, get out, get out. That would have been it. Done. I don't know, Piper. You be making me mad with this book. Now, the Tampa Bay Hotel that was mentioned, that was modeled after a Moorish place in Africa, was that also a real place?
Actually, I was just down there because I'm in Florida on a writer's retreat, and part of the quote unquote objective while I was here, it was to get to go to Tampa to see this place that is now surrounded by buildings at the University of Tampa. But it's a museum now, and it's a museum that holds some of her dresses, and that they loaned one of the dresses, which was something I had never seen before. It was a new dress to the Met, because the Met has 4 of her dresses on exhibition right now until September. So it's still there. This building had once been a hotel, and now is a museum on the campus of the University of Tampa. So, once I was pointing out to you, I was like, that's where they met. So there.
Oh, wow. So, Anne was just... She was an amazing person. She was ruined several times. Probably more than that, because in the back of the book you mentioned that, you condensed things for the sake of the book. But the way that you wrote her, she was very resilient. She had moments where she broke. But then she would pick herself back up and she would keep going. So explain why it was important to show that resilience, because you didn't just show it in the things that happened, but you also showed it in her speech. Explain why that was important.
Well, this is what Black women do. What we've been doing time and immemorial. It's what we do. It's to keep it moving, and to have a faith or belief, if it's in yourself, if it's in what you're doing, if it's in God, whatever it is, to keep it moving, and to try to be thankful and to be resilient, like you said, in terms of that. So yeah, that was important for me to show that even in terms of this time period that she was born in and lived during. Like I said, you see how she just carries herself in the midst of these rude people. So, Mike Douglas just being rude. I mean, he had this obsession with how much the dresses cost, because there's a mini fashion show as part of it. Just obsessed. I was like, why is she so obsessed with how much the dresses cost? And it was interesting because you could tell that even as she's giving him prices, she's not thinking about it.
But he is, because he was pocket checking, because why is this little black girl making all this money? And even the money she was making, sir, she was not making what them white designers were making, not by a long shot. So why are you so pressed about it?
Pressed, child. Wait till you see.
He was pocket checking. Because that's what they do.
He was trying to total too much, and you could just that for her. That was not the point. Because I was listening to her figures. I was like, why'd you say this one again? She's gonna say the same figure again. She did, it didn't matter to her.
She even said that she just, in the book you had her say that she was just like, I just love making these dresses for people, you know. And I like the resolve. I won't say what it was, but I like the resolve when the thing happened with her eyes, and then she said, I've got to change. That was so moving for me, because I was like, this woman is making all these dresses for these people that don't give a damn about her. All they want is to look good. And really, I mean, we've been sewing dresses for white people since the beginning of time. I mean, you know, there was a seamstress, Ona Judge, who was George Washington's wife's seamstress. They tried to track that woman down for years.
She never came back.
Nope. She escaped.
Yep.
And they tried to track her down for years because she was the best seamstress that woman had ever had. You know, I mean, so that was what we did.
I was also
among other things.
Project with Elizabeth Keckley, who was Mary Lincoln's modiste, who had they had a whole circumstance too, and the previous historical fiction about her just was not done properly. So I'm going to be revisiting that for
thank you.
2024.
Okay.
Yeah. Because,
well, good.
Yeah. It was not done correctly at all. Yeah.
Okay. We need you to rewrite them stories, sis.
Yes, that is
Okay.
exactly. I mean, when I first had it, I was like, "Oh, hell no!"
What the hell?
Well, I mean, the fact that it's called Mrs. Lincoln's Dressmaker.
You know, Thurgood Marshall once said that I get so tired of trying to save the white man's soul. And the more I live, the more I understand what that man meant.
I'm gonna fix it though.
Okay.
It's gonna be alright.
Please do. Please do.
Yep. For Elizabeth.
Thank you. I'm dubbing you the historical fiction author of correcting all the Black history things.
Well, I'm not the only one right now, and that's the cool thing, is that more people are coming up and doing it, because it is quite a labor. So it does have to be a labor of love if you do it. So I'm glad that other people, because there's so many stories that at least I know. And it's kind of a weird thing, because some authors want to get possessive about certain subjects and stuff. I'm like, look, there's plenty for everyone.
Yeah. Like,
you
can't possibly uncover everything. There's too much, especially of our history.
Yes.
There's way too much of our history. I mean, you could have 1,000 different Black people covering the entire period from us coming to these shores all the way up to present, and there's still an endless amount of stuff that you could write about.
Yeah, exactly.
So, when does your book come out?
June 7th, which is in 4 days' time. So,
yes. And where will readers be able to buy your book?
Well, they'll be able to purchase it at your local independent booksellers. Be able to buy it at Barnes & Noble and at Target and at Walmart. Most pointedly, Costco. It is the June buyer's pick for Costco. You have the Costco connection. There's an interview with Dan Bear.
All right. Congratulations.
And at Hudson Booksellers and airports, too.
All right.
Yep.
Because I pre-ordered it on Amazon, but I just might go buy a couple more copies.
Share,
just to
spread
get
the
that
word. Yes.
Get that bump out and give it. I know I'm gonna give my mom a copy because she be loving Jackie O. I'm like, here, read this and then see what you think about your Jackie O after that, ma'am. See what you think. Because I know my mama don't know about Ann Lowe. I know she don't. Like, here.
Well, I mean, shoot, my father and mother were like the fashion-conscious black folk in Pittsburgh, and also I did not grow up knowing about this woman. It was only after I went to graduate school and found out. That's how well they had erased her. How completely she had been erased from history.
I'm sure that Ann Lowe is looking down on you and is smiling upon you for this.
I hope so. At least her great-granddaughter likes it and all of that too, so that's a good thing.
Oh, she does?
Yeah, well, that's the recent uncovering of the Mike Douglas tape had led to the fact that her great-granddaughter has 2 children, so there is a line of descendants in terms of it. Yeah.
Okay.
And they have things. So there's even more to be told, and there's more work to be done for textile scholars, etc. Margaret Powell, who I had referred to, who had started that work. Unfortunately, she died of breast cancer at 38 years old.
Oh my goodness. Why does that seem to always happen? The people who are just the champions for stuff just die.
I know.
Too early.
Too early, too young. She was trying to get a comprehensive scholarly biography of her together and an exhibit. So at least because of her efforts, and I said the reason why you write historical fiction is to make people aware. Or sometimes I call it the putting butts in seats of historical classrooms. Make people
or I like
aware.
your other term, the historical tea.
Or the historical tea, right?
Sit your little self on down.
And stop telling me that so-and-so is boring, because it means you don't know. You were not properly educated about it. But once people begin to look and investigate and learn, that probably somebody out there will be motivated to finish her work.
Absolutely. So where can we find you on social media?
I'm at Piper Hughley, mostly on Twitter, where I'm pouring people's feet to the fire, and Facebook. That's what some people say. I don't know, but
that's my kind of woman.
Facebook at Piper G. Hughley, and as you know, Audra, I am coming to learn and be more familiar with Instagram at Piper_Hughley, and then my website at piperhughley.com.
And Hughley, for people who don't know, is spelled Hugueley.
That is correct. Thank you
yes.
for doing that.
Well, we have come to the end of our show. I want to thank you so much for this book, for the work that you're doing, for sharing your time and talents with us today. Absolute joy having you, even through all of our technical difficulties. We did it!
We did it! Yes, amen.
Boozer Bros, you know how I do. I leave you with a quote at the end of every show, and today it comes from the late, great Dr. Maya Angelou, and she said, "Success is liking yourself, liking what you do, and liking how you do it. Until next time, you know what to do. Grab a book and read, and I'm out." You've been listening to Between the Reads. I'm your host, Audra Russell. Thanks for lending me your ear. If you enjoy this content, please consider supporting this independent podcast by becoming a Patreon at patreon.com/betweenthereads or making a one-time donation at www.ko-fi.com/betweenthereadspodcast. That's www.ko-fi.com/betweenthereadspodcast. Tune in next week for another great episode.